Okay, Rambam Sefer HaMizvot, Misvot, I say a positive commandment. The last one that we read was Misvah Kof Lamed Bet, number 132. So after going through the various obligations of giving, apportioning, and separating from our various profits of the yield of our land, of our produce, and whether it's giving it to a Kohen or Levi, or bringing it to Yerushalayim, or the case of Maaser Ani, giving it to the poor. We had a few accessory misvot, we call them. The one that you have to confess or proclaim that you've fulfilled all the different procedures and specifications of these misvot accurately. And then, and these were back-to-back misvot in Parashat, beginning of Parashat Ki Tavo, the misvah, when you bring bikurim, the first fruits of a certain species, to Yerushalayim, to the Kohen, this proclamation of gratitude to Hashem, acknowledgement where He brought us from humble beginnings until our redemption, and acknowledging that what we have is really from Him. That brings us up to, we'll say one last in this particular series of Misvot, Misvah Kof Lamed Gimel 133. So this is different in that it's not the giving of a certain species necessarily, but it's when we make out of one of the 5 grains, we create a dough. We call that challah after dough has risen, and we give, well, from the arisotenu is from the dough, and we give what we call challah, a portion, so Torah's name for it, to the Kohen. And therefore, the Kohen has a certain portion of a certain baked good from the 5 grains of a certain volume, removed from that and given as one of the 24 matanot kihuna, the gifts and the offerings to a Kohen to sustain the nation of Kohanim. They live on these things. The source in the Torah, Reshit arisotechem, halat harimu teruma, the beginning, or the first part of your dough, give as a portion and a lift as an offering to the Kohen. There is a separate masechet in Seder Zeraim called Halah, Masechet Tumura, also another masechet, and this also, as the previous Misvot, is only obligatory in Eretz Yisrael. And of course, nowadays, we no longer give, as with the other Misvot, this to the Kohen. Rather, we just take it off as a zecher, which we, even though outside of Eretz Yisrael, traditionally, we just, because we can't partake in it, therefore we burn it after we remove that portion of halah. So it's still a misvah in a different manner. It's no longer a gift to the Kohen. All right, Misvah Kof Lamed Dalet. We're still going to now be on Misvot of the land, but a different realm of Misvot, and one that we happen to be in right now in our very year. Number 134, Kof Lamed Dalet. Hishe Sivanu lahafkir kol ma shetisma haaretz b'shnat hashemita v'hetir simchat karkaotenu kulam l'chol adam. We have an obligation on what's called the year of Shemitah, which is the 7th year in the sabbatical cycle, to lahafkir, to disown all that grows out of our land, the land that we own, and allow the growth of our land for everyone. Make it disowned, free for all, not particularly guarded or supervised and hoarded by us. It's open to the public. And the pasuk tells us, and on the 7th year, that's the Shemitah year, you must relinquish and release your land. Let it go. The Midrash says as follows. The Midrash has an interesting analysis, which the Rambam will explain in detail. The Midrash asks rhetorically, keren, the vineyard, grapes, in other words, and olives, were included in a general reference, why did they come out? And it's, as we'll explain, it's referring to that after there was a general command to release and mafkir and disown the produce of your land on the 7th year, there's another reference in the pasuk that specifically referred to grapes and olives. And so if they were already included in the general command and obligation, why did they come out and were separated and isolated only those two species, almost as a separate command? The Midrash answers, lahakish alehem, to compare them. Ma kerem miyuhad shehu ba'aseh be'aseh ve'ovrim ala be'lo ta'aseh. Just like kerem, the vineyard, meaning the grapes, is unique, or at least by the Torah, explicitly spoken about to be unique, that it has the Misvot aseh, and also you can transgress a negative commandment, lo ta'aseh, af kol shehu be'aseh avrim alav be'lo ta'aseh. So anything else regarding this Misvah of Shemitah that has a positive command and obligation attached to it, also you'll transgress if you violate it in the lo ta'aseh. So the Rambam will explain in more detail now. The idea is about what I'm about to explain. Here it is. When we quoted the previous quote, general command from the Torah, the 7th year, relinquish everything. It includes all that which grows from the land on the 7th year. Whether talking about figs or grapes or olives or peaches or pomegranates or wheat or barley and anything similar to it, all species that grow are included in that one directive. So now the Torah has told us that relinquishing all growth from our ground is a positive commandment. But then what happened is the Torah, for some reason, in more detail specified and said, so should you do for your vineyard, meaning your grapes and your olives. That was already the olives and grapes included in the general directive. Why did the Torah then separate and specify just those two species? That was the question of the Midrash. The Omnam, and here's the answer of the Midrash. The specific command was now only recited regarding olives and grapes. Ba'avur sheba bakatuv azhara biyehud mile'esof tevuat hakeren, because the Torah only had a warning, meaning a mizvah lo ta'aseh, regarding gathering the produce of the vineyard. In other words, picking grapes on the sabbatical year. The Torah says specifically, don't harvest your grapes. Okay, so now there's only a lo ta'aseh stated regarding grapes. And so here comes the Torah now with the comparison between the grapes and the olives. Just like the vineyard, disowning it is a positive command, and therefore refraining or not observing that positive command is violating a negative commandment. The comparison now in that pasuk, comparing the grapes to the olives, is ken hazayit, so to the olives. Anything that grows, anything else that grows on the 7th year on Shemitah, that we already told you, all species are included in the positive commandment. Violating it, there will be a negative commandment. V'din hazai, v'din sha'al pirot ehad. And the olive just came to be a nice, loyal representative of all other species. And so you're comparing, the Torah compared the grapes, which has a positive and a negative, aseh lo ta'aseh, to the olives, which only had an aseh, and the olives now is the representative of all other species, and saying just like that has the lo ta'aseh, in its violation, so too all other species have a lo ta'aseh in its violation. So that's a very nice midrash, and it taught us a very nice principle and showed us how the Pesukim work. Why did the Rambam bring this? Hined ba'er mikoma shekadam shashmatat giduleh shivi'it misvat aseh. So what you see now from this aforementioned midrash is that relinquishing from all species is a positive commandment. There is also a separate masechet in Seder Zeraim called Shivi'it, the 7th year. All these misvot laws are in that masechet. And of course, this also is only applicable to the produce and the growth from the ground of Israel. There's no Shemitah obligation outside Eretz Yisrael. Another, Mizvar Kuf Lamed He, number 135. He shesivano l'shbot me'avodat ha'aretz b'shana shvi'it. So besides the fact that we have a positive commandment to relinquish ownership of of what grows from our ground, there is also a positive commandment to refrain and stop and rest from working the ground on the 7th year. Pasuk says, "Beharish u'bachasir tishbot." That's back in Parashat Mishpatim. The first mentioning of this, with plowing and with harvesting, you shall rest. Meaning, don't work the land. This has already been, or maybe here means pa'amayim. This command was been said again. Ve'amar Shabbat Shabbaton hi la'aretz. That's in Parashat Behar. There must be a resting of the land. Ufar kadam lanu hay Shabbaton aseh. And so we already learned in a Mizvah a long time ago, it's Mizvah number 30, that the word Shabbaton, we learned that regarding Yom Tov, right? It's a positive commandment. Ve'amar gam ken v'shabbateh ha'aretz. And it also says there's another form there, also in Parashat Behar, and the land shall rest. The laws here also on found in Masechet Shvi'it. Its obligation also is only a Torah obligation, any obligation at all, not to work the land or to rest from the land, a positive commandment outside of Eretz Yisrael. Let's give one more because it's very related. Mizvah Kuf Lamed Vav, number 136. We have a special Mizvah to sanctify the 50th year after 7 sabbatical cycles. And to treat the 50th year and refrain from working the land just like on the 7th year, the Shemitah year. Meaning there's the back-to-back, the 49th and 50th year that are the same. The Torah says as a source, also in Parashat Behar, you shall sanctify the 50th year. It explains, whatever was stated in the 7th year, so too was stated in the Yovel, the Jubilee year, the 50th year. Kilomar, meaning to say, that the equation, the Torah equated the positive commandment, the directive, the same way that the Torah equated the azhara, the negative commandment, which we'll explain soon, the violation of in the Misvot lo ta'aseh, of not working the land, of working the land on 7th year will also be just like the violation on the 50th year. And the laws, therefore, on the sabbatical year, which is every 7th year, and the 50th year are equal regarding not working the land and disowning all that which is grown off the land. All that is included in one command, not 2 separate commands, which is sanctify the 50th year. In other words, the Torah, they gave us a few misvot regarding the Shemitah year, and then just said ditto regarding the 50th year to include both of those. And we know that what does this word kiddashte mean, sanctify? That you have to release and disown all that which the land yields on that year. Amar ki yobelhi Chodesh Tehiyeh Lachem. The pasuk says also in Parashat Behar, because it's the Yovel, the Jubilee year, it must be sanctified to you. This also is Eretz Yisrael Mitzvah, but ubitnai, on a condition, that all the tribes have to be situated in their respective areas. Kilomar, Yoshev Bechalko, Ube'eretz Yisrael, that they are in Israel and in their portions of land in Israel, and they should not be mixed with each other, and rather limited to their designated boundaries of the Shivatim. Amen ve'amen.